Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Nick, your host of On the Scene with Martini. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget, you are the scene. Hey guys, what's up? It's Nick, On the Scene with Martini. Today I'm here with Jon from Turmoil. How you doing?
Good, man. Good to
Thanks
see
for
you.
joining. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Before we get started, I just want to say a special thank out to Day in the Life Records. Dan, he's sponsoring this video. Great shop in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Tons of hardcore. He's rooted in the New Jersey hardcore scene. So thank you again, Dan, and there'll be some links below. But
Shout
yeah,
out.
yeah, shout out Dan. So I just kind of want to get started how I always do, like how you kind of got into music and your your start of Turmoil.
Start Turmoil. Okay. Well, my first um got into music, like got into the hardcore scene or just music in
Just in
general.
general, like kind of like your childhood, like everyone always is. I get the most common answer I get is Devo, Depeche Mode, and No Doubt. Those are like the three I always get.
Oh man, no, my first, yeah. Hmm. Well, so my love for music probably came from my relationship with my mom. My mom was like a big music person. She had a huge record collection. Huh. Maybe by, I mean, I have friends that have huge record collections. She had a moderately large record collection for a mom.
Hmm.
And we would listen to music a lot. I went through her records. I would just sit down and listen to all her records. That was probably where I fell in love with music first. And then that turned into, you know, I've probably a lot of normal channels for a lot of people that are into the kind of music that we play. Like eventually that turned into like a love for BMX racing. And then I met people within BMX that were into like punk and hardcore. And that was really my intro to punk music. I think I got an exploited tape from somebody. And like the very first record I got was Sex Pistols at the mall. That was yeah, I played the shit out of that record too. Like I still like that record actually.
Yeah,
um, but yeah, and then that turned into skateboarding, met people. Somebody introduced me to like Government Issue and like Minor Threat and like the whole DC hardcore scene. Sorry, my phone's going off and I have the ringer off, which is weird. Sorry about that.
you're all good.
Um, um, and then eventually I decided I wanted to play drums. I started practicing like instead of going to like class, I would like skip class and then go to like the music room and just play drums for certain classes. Joined a hardcore band eventually. I got asked because I was in an area that actually not far from Dan in Lancaster. I grew up in Palmyra, Pennsylvania, which is like right outside of Hershey, and there were some kids in Hershey that had a hardcore band, and that band eventually became a band called Conviction. And dude named Jim Winters, who also played in Earth Crisis and The Promise, he kind of recruited me to play drums and sort of taught me a lot of stuff. Like I was like pretty bad when we first started, and then um, I was hungry to learn, and he had a very specific style, and I mean anybody that knows stories of Jimmy, like they know how he can be. And yeah, it forced me to, it was like sort of like a drill sergeant in terms of like getting my shit together. And yeah, I joined Conviction, and then Conviction went on to like play with like Earth Crisis, and we talked earlier about Jamie Josta. Like we played with we like knew Jamie and like stuff like that. Early days, a lot of Buffalo people that morphed into playing a bunch of shows, and then Turmoil hit me up. I was in college. I was doing shows at the University of Arts. There was something posted recently on Philly Hardcore History about a show that we had done at like at U Arts, and it was right around that time that Turmoil had come back from a Madball tour in Europe, and they were like, "Hey, we're looking for a drummer." And I don't think this is a secret. I wasn't a really big Turmoil fan. Like I liked them, but I wasn't like, oh, I really fucking can't wait to join Turmoil. But then we had a conversation, and they were like, we love Dead Guy and we want to be more like Dead Guy. And I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. because the early Turmoil stuff was just not. I mean, I don't think any of those guys would be offended by this at this point. We're all on the same page, but it just wasn't my thing. It was a little. It was kind of. It was moshy, but it was like moshy in a very like early '90s way.
Hmm.
It wasn't that I didn't like it. It just didn't resonate that much. And then when we started listening to some stuff together and getting ideas, we were listening to these bands like Groundwork. Band 400 Years was a band I liked. Uh, Dead Guy, big influence. And we never quite went the route of all those bands, but we sort of infused that some of the things that we had like really liked about those bands into what Turmoil was doing. And that was really the start of something, and then it turned into something bigger as we went along. So it was cool.
Just to start from like when you were talking about like going through like your mom's collection and stuff.
Mhm.
When I was younger, my parents would always say that like we had a Fleetwood Mac and an Eagles live disc that I would just like play the shit out of. This is like when I was like 2 and 3. Was there any records that like you remember like pulling out like this is the one I want to listen to? And it's like the
Yeah.
same shit over and over.
Yeah, the Beatles. It's a pretty basic answer, but there was a couple Beatles songs. Um, there were some. My mom had all these 45s of like R&B that would not be very like no like the more common stuff would be like something like Chuck Berry, like that kind of stuff. A lot of girl groups from that
Hmm.
time. I think I was just enamored by. I also liked country music. Like I liked this weird range of stuff, but not like real country music. It was like
Like more
Kenny.
like folky kind of deal.
No, like the popular. This was at the time. I mean, I'm a lot older than you, so this is like at the
Yeah.
time. Um, like Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers were huge, and I thought she was cool, and I thought he was cool, and they were.
Yeah, yeah.
um, but I still listen to Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton actually, but I listen to like a lot more like I don't know, outlaw country stuff probably now, more Waylon Jennings, Merle Haggard kind of stuff. But that was, I think Johnny Cash was maybe like the rebel thing that I kind of got into, where I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is sort of badass. But it was really like, it was pretty simple. It was like once I went to like a BMX thing and I heard like punk, that like clicked. That's one of those things where you like all of a sudden you pick a lane.
Hmm.
Like you're like, I like everything. And then all of a sudden you hear something, you're like, oh, this is my shit. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm gonna do.
Did you like when you're at that point in time when you hear your first like punk song, like you're like into it, were you drumming at that point too? Or was that
No, it would have
so
been
was
pre.
that like your intro into
Yeah,
drumming then?
yeah. That I think drumming was just something that felt like it was going to be fun to do. It wasn't. I probably didn't really start drumming until eighth or ninth grade, but I kind of found punk rock in like sixth, seventh grade. But once I heard 7 Seconds, um, that was when I started like really thinking about playing drums. I was like, man, there was the Walk Together, Rock Together, the B side of it was like a live show. And I loved the live show more than I even like. I like have these like daydreams about what it would be like to go to a punk show because I was like too young to go to a show around the middle of nowhere. There were really no shows around. I mean, at the time, I think 7 Seconds was probably playing Lancaster to just a few hundred people, and then bands like, Youth of Today, Turning Point, they were also playing shows in front of like, what would today be considered not a very big show. But
Yeah.
at the time, I remember I was supposed to go see Youth of Today in Ephrata, I think. And there was like 7 people could fit in the car, and I was like the eighth person. So like I didn't get to go see them. But my first band was I wish. My first band was Verbal Assault.
The first band you've ever seen?
For first band I ever saw was Verbal Assault. And that's a great band to see first because they had their shit together. They were just really good musicians, especially at that time when there were a lot of bands that weren't very good musicians. Now I think the game is completely different, but they weren't like a typical hardcore band either. Um, they were, I don't know if you ever heard Verbal Assault, but it's like it sort of spans a few genres. It's like there's elements of it that you could probably attach to like more of an emo vibe, but they weren't an emo band. Like they always
Hmm.
had like a higher energy, but just the way that the some of the styles they played had more of like a rock emo hardcore thing all mixed together, and it that was game changing for me. Once I went to that show, I was like, I want to do this all the time. So
Was there ever a time where you tried a different instrument prior to drumming, or was it just
no,
straight drums?
yeah, I mean, I had piano lessons when I was young, and I was terrible at it. I just my
Yeah,
brain doesn't work like that.
fair
I'm not
enough.
good with like for whatever reason, I can't play anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with Turmoil, then you're saying like you kind of joined, like after a few albums or whatever came out.
Yeah, they didn't have an album. They had I think they had a demo and an EP at the time. And I don't know if that EP was a compilation of any 7 inches. That's crazy that I don't know that. I'm just realizing that right now. But um they had an EP that was doing relatively well, and I liked them. Like I seen them live and they were good live, and I liked like I liked them as people, and I liked the music to a degree. It wasn't like aspirational for me, like I said at the time, but uh I that was what I was had been in, like in like my other band Conviction, and then eventually I did a band called Vigil, which just had a really small run of shows and stuff that we did before that kind of disbanded. I was just like not really doing a whole, like I was just in college and doing shows when they hit me up to play. I think I forgot your original question.
No, you're good. You're good. So then for like Turmoil, then were you friends with them prior, like school friends or
No, no. I mean, friends through the scene. We used to
gotcha.
play the way I saw those guys the most would have been the Unisound. There's a club that was in Reading, Pennsylvania called the Unisound. And the Unisound like has its own lore and its own history. It's like it was like this empty warehouse that this guy who was a school teacher, I believe. I know he was on the school board at some point in Reading. Reading was like not hasn't been doing well as a city for a while. I think it's doing a little bit better now.
It's okay. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay is better than it was back in the 90s. So
Yeah.
and he was running this like rogue club. Yeah, I don't know, but I got the feeling he didn't have any like permits or anything like that. And there were skate ramps in there, and there was often like fights and things like there would like skinheads would show up, and then there would be some kind of riot happen. But we used to travel in groups. Like we'd get like a couple cars together, or just like a car full of people, and go to shows. I saw like Token Entry, Judge, Integrity. I think played their first show at that club. If I'm pretty sure about
Really?
that.
In
Yeah,
Reading.
in Reading. Yeah,
No shit.
you can double check that math. I might be wrong, but I said that to Dwid, and he seemed like he confirmed that. I believe that's true.
That's cool. I didn't know
It was a
that.
Judge show actually, and I mean, just a ton of bands played there. I could go. Sick of It All. Biohazard played there. Like it was
That's
like
cool.
a wide range of like any shitty band you never heard of, plus like bands up to like at that time probably Biohazard was probably one of the bigger bands that would have played.
So the rest of the guys in Turmoil, they went to like they were close. Like, didn't they go to school together? Like,
Yeah, that's true. They all grew up together.
did you
Yeah,
feel
unlike
like
the band.
I was gonna say, did you feel like an outsider at all, kind of joining, and especially joining on like the latter half because you have a pretty big involvement with like just everything about Turmoil.
That's true.
So, do you feel like it was a little difficult, sorry, to get in there?
Yeah, no, not really actually. I it was kind of seamless to be honest.
Hmm.
I think that they were looking for man, I wish they could answer this to a degree, but like it felt like they liked what I was bringing to the table, and I liked where they were going, and we felt I think we when we started playing we were like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. We all kind of like were like, this is going somewhere. And I think we maybe overcorrected a little bit. I think about our first 7 inch that we did together, and it was like um just like all the same tempo, kind of like not like a lot of. I don't think we had figured out a range for us to play yet. We were kind of in like a pocket, and we were kind of we were trying to do something that we enjoyed, and I liked it, but like what we evolved into became much more of what I think we all aspired to do. Um, where we landed with the process of, which is like the record that most people remember, that was really like a few years in the making, and that was like when we did that, we were like, oh, okay, this is like what we want to be doing. You know, we were still finding our way for a while prior to that. I didn't feel like an odd man out. Just to answer that question, I
Yeah,
didn't feel
yeah,
like an odd man out. They kind of let me take the reins on a bunch of stuff. Like I had done a lot of artwork for, I think that's actually not true. I had done some t-shirt related things for Conviction in terms of like making things and making stickers. Not, I want to give credit where credit's due. Jim Winters did a lot of the artwork for that band Conviction, but I learned a lot in that process. And then when we got to Turmoil, I just started trying some stuff and the guys were into it. And then it kind of became a thing where I did a lot of the artwork. I worked on a lot of the, like me, Hodges, and Hydro predominantly did the music together. Eventually, at some point, it was just Hodges and I. Um, and then lyrically, Gula just got to a point where he would just give me a lyrics that like thoughts he had, and I was like, I think he trusted me a little bit more with like the patterning of the lyrics, like coming up with like how the vocal pattern was going to fall into the. I'm also difficult. Like I probably criticized him when he started doing something. I was like, no, we got
yeah.
to do it like something different, something different. So I think at some point he just sort of gave up the reins, and that kind of became like something we were all comfortable with, and it felt pretty good. So that's how we ended up getting where we got to.
That's cool. Did you feel like when you first started, and you were saying like how you weren't like the biggest fan of like their original music,
Mm-hmm.
but they gave you ideas or bands to kind of like look forward to?
Mm-hmm.
Um, did you find that you kind of had to like recreate a new sound? Like, did you guys kind of scrap what you had before? Because I mean, you were also saying too that like they kind of gave you the reins. It's almost like an outsider gets the reins and kind of like recorrects
I
this
think that
situation.
I don't want to overstate my position. I think Hodges and Hydro had a lot of ideas of what they wanted to do that they didn't feel like they were able to do that before for whatever reason, or
Hmm.
maybe they just hadn't made the pivot. And I think changing the drummer was probably an opportunity to like try some things that they weren't doing. I think that the some of the previous drummers were more just groove oriented drummers, and I was coming in with a little more like just a different technique, and it changed the way I heard the riffs, and it changed the way we played the riffs. And
Gotcha.
so I don't think it was so much like, hey, let me take over. It wasn't like that at all. It was more like, hey, we have this riff idea. And then I think I think it's fair to say that like a lot of those ideas and like maybe didn't explore all the different options of how they could play that. They would sort of like I think the earlier songs just had a more basic thing, and then this was like a really like they were coming to me at a time when they were also ready to move on to something else stylistically.
Gotcha.
And Hodges had some riffs, and Hydro had some riffs, and we would just jam, which I think is probably common. We would just like they would play a riff over and over, and then I would try like four different ways to play drums to that until we found something that felt good, and then build off of that. And that all happened. That started happening pretty quickly, and I think our mutual interest in some of those other bands, Voivod was a big influence for them, less for me. They were like they loved Voivod from a guitar standpoint, and like I know Exodus was a thing, and there was like just some metal bands that like were always going to be big influences for them. And then for me it was like I was just trying to test myself on how can I try to play something that's not so common and try and make it a little more interesting, and it all worked out.
Were you writing prior to Turmoil at all?
Yeah, I was a to a lesser degree, but I it became because the guy. So I talked about Winners before. I think he's
Yeah.
a big part of my music thing. Is like in the beginning he would write to a drum machine, and then I just played whatever that drum machine was. So like because I wasn't that great in the very beginning, and then eventually when I got more comfortable and I started to like develop a little bit of my own thing, then it became more of a collaborative effort. But it was always his show for those bands. Like he was the main driver of the riffs and like had the ideas, and then I kind of followed the lead. I think when we got to Turmoil, it was an opportunity to like truly collaborate in a way where I could be like, let's try this, let's do this, like, and then that became predominantly, I think Hodges and I were the driving force. Hydro was still a big part of it, and to this day still is. But I think at that stage, Hodges was the one that really like started to run with like a style that you could probably really narrow down to like this is what. And then I mean Hydro did too. It was just like I see a lot of like the sound that we play. I associate that with Hodges just because like he's done other bands and he sort of there's things that you can pick up when you hear those other bands where you're like, oh, that's the same person for sure.
Yeah. What's
And
like your process of writing? You were saying earlier about how like Gula kind of gave you ideas. What like
yeah,
what's like your starting to end of how to create a song?
well, I think different songs have been created different ways. Like I one that everybody who knows Turmoil knows is Playing Dead, and that song was actually like we had just a tiniest little riff, like this little part, and then we just um, ran with that, started flipping the beat around, trying a couple different things, and then adding to it and taking away from it. And the process for us would be there's a riff idea typically, and then it's like that may not end up dictating the song, but that'll be like a starting point. And then from there, it's like figuring out something that feels good on the drums and then deciding, usually for me, it's like, okay, we have these riffs, but like, how are the vocals going to play into this? Like, how can we think about how vocals are going to lay within this framework? And like, should we extend parts, shorten parts? Should we rethink a certain riff or something to like allow the vocals to do a little bit more? That's where we landed with the process of like it was a lot more thinking about those things. Whereas like earlier on, it was just like here's a part, here's a part, here's a part, and then you kind of smash it all together and come up with a song. I think the process of was the closest thing to like really trying to think of like, okay, this song has this dynamic, and
Hmm.
then let's like make sure that we try something else that's over here so that we're kind of thinking about the album. So there's a little, to answer your question, there's like it's like sometimes it's vocally motivated, a lot of times it starts with a riff, but there's different things that we do in different songs where it might not have been an idea, a riff idea, but like, hey, let's have the drums have a break here, or let's have like the vocals do something and try to just add a little space so that the riff itself can stand out, but we want to give it some breathing room also.
For the process of, I was also reading too that you produced and like helped record a good bit of it.
Me personally,
Yeah, or no?
I was in the studio for almost all of it, but Steve Evans really was um the dude. I mean,
The
Steve, I don't want
dude.
to take anything from Steve.
Yeah,
Steve
yeah.
like knew what the fuck he was doing, and like we were lucky to work with him. He's a great dude. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of production ideas.
Okay.
So like that's probably my contribution, meaning like, hey, I want these vocals to trade off here, or I'd like to get the sample here, or I'd like to take a break, or I want to re-record the drums a little differently for this part. I mean, actually, to be fair, that was actually one of Steve's ideas. But I did have a song that I wrote. We wrote one song in the studio that like the band had never played, never even recorded, like never we never even went through it one time in a practice, and um we ended up just like uh you know formulating things like in the studio, and like that things happen like that when you're trying to squeeze out like a bunch of songs and you're trying to meet like the record label is like, hey, we need 35 minutes or 40 minutes of a record or something like that. You're like, oh shit, we better come up with something.
Yeah.
So
For the
but to answer your question, like I didn't have a lot to do with like the recording as much as I did like just I mean I just like ideas on how things could flow and ideas on how things should sound.
How long did it take to like record or like to go through the writing and stuff for the process of?
That's a tough question. I would say, you know, I mean, there's a couple songs on there that were written. I guess it's not that hard to figure out. I never thought about that, but I would say whatever amount of time it took from Bleeding Hands to whenever we completed From Bleeding Hands, which must have been like 95. Damn, it must have only been about a year, but it feels like so much more than that. We recorded the process of in 96, I believe. And I think it was released in 97. And again, you can check liner notes because I don't actually
Yeah,
fucking know that.
yeah, yeah.
But I would say like a year, but some of those tracks probably were like ideas that we had from an earlier time.
hmm
So 2 years, but not much more than that because there was so much evolution so fast at that time that like the process of really was distilled down to a sound that we really only had for about a year and a half to 2 years.
What was it like touring with Turmoil? My friend, or my friend and a mutual friend of the band, Dave, was saying that he was always in shock that like you guys went over to like Europe and stuff. What was it
Yeah.
like going over like seas for the first time and playing? Like, was that kind of like the wow, we actually not made it, but you know what I mean? Like, we have a following now, we can actually do things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think similar to a lot of bands that like we suffered from being on Century Media Records. Let's start there. Like we loved like I loved the guys from Century Media. We always had well, we didn't always we usually liked the people we worked with at Century Media. We had a couple weird experiences with a couple people, but for the most part they were supportive. You know, we weren't a big band on their roster, but we really were the only like one of the only hardcore bands at the time. There were a couple since then, and there have been like they eventually tried to like sort of make a hardcore label out of like a side project of Century Media, but um, that was difficult for us in the U.S. because I don't think we. I think there were other bands that got onto labels that just even just a domestic label that Century Media being from Germany, a domestic label that like maybe wasn't nearly as big, but they would get more attention in the US because we were on this like metal label and people are like, who's this band on this metal label? Like,
hmm
um, so what Century Media did help with was in Europe, like our distribution was pretty good. And it was a little easier for us to tour there. And the band had done a Madball tour before I was in the band. Um, and actually, it was like right when they came home from that tour, they kicked their drummer out and gave me a call. And so that was already built into the process for me. Like it wasn't like the first, the first thing we did was like go to Europe. I mean, actually, I skipped my college graduation to go to Europe with them. We got booked on a Snapcase tour, and it was like 4 weeks, and Europe was tough at the time. It could still be, but like I remember Snapcase ended the tour early because like it just wasn't it was you never knew like Snapcase was pretty big
Yeah.
and you just never knew what you were going to hit like you hit a run of like shows that weren't promoted well or like you're going to like say I don't know Eastern Europe or like I think at the time the trouble was like England like they just weren't well promoted shows or the bands like we weren't drawing maybe
Yeah.
but there was also like it was a heyday similar to I think now there's a lot of similarities where like there was just this massive wave of hardcore bands coming over. So at some point you're like, oh, there's a show every other night here. Like interest is gonna wane at some point. Earth Crisis had been there a lot, Madball had been there a lot, Sick of It All had been there a lot, Snapcase had been there. So like it was cool to like go tour and like we did domestic tours. We did a tour with Damnation was my first tour with Turmoil, and then we did one with Snapcase later on in the U.S. We eventually did some of our own headlining tours, but headlining back then, it was just some nights you get a couple hundred people, and some nights you get 25 people staring at you, in the middle
Yeah.
of nowhere. So,
What was your favorite country to play in during your like initial runs?
um, my favorite. Well, let me. I'm a big fan of Sweden. Period.
hmm
So, like, I'm a little biased.
Yeah, yeah.
I loved going to Sweden because I loved going to Sweden. Like I would just like walk around and be like, and just like I was just enamored with like coming from Philly, it was like a culture shock,
Yeah,
like, oh, there's no trash. People aren't like mean to each other. This is crazy. Like, um, uh, I really, honestly, this is going to sound like such a cop out answer, but I really enjoyed, I think Czech Republic probably was my favorite if I had to like
oh, that's
pick a
cool.
different one.
Yeah,
Prague was like one of my favorite cities. It was, everybody was up late. You could go get good street food super late. People were cool, but we had really good. I mean, honestly, I had a ton of really good experiences. Like touring the band was like so formative for me. Just building friendships that still last to this day. Like one of my best friends, we don't talk every week or every day, but like, he's in Sweden. Johan, he was in a band called Nine. He now books like pop bands and stuff like that for a living. There's just a ton of people. I don't want to list everybody, but I
yeah,
just met up with a dude named Danny, and when I was in Vegas visiting family, and Danny I met him on a tour in '96 in Austria, and we've been friends ever since. So
that's cool.
yeah, it's cool, and
Yeah,
it's not just about friendships. It's like it sort of teaches you to be. I think being on tour teaches you to like find some level of happiness in like an uncomfortable situation, because inevitably it's going to suck at some point, and you got to work through it and learn to like you know learn to get along with people.
yeah. It sounds like the Turmoil tours went well, just in terms of like just actually going and like. But did you touring with Conviction
Mhm.
prior? Did you find it easier or harder?
Conviction never really toured. We were never hardcore was actually in a really was kind of small at that time. Like
Okay.
the New York hardcore scene was huge, but getting out to the rest of the country, like getting out to central Pennsylvania, it was you would if you were going to put a hardcore bill together at that time, you probably were going to end up with like some punk bands on the bill and some like death metal bands, because there just wasn't enough of like a music scene to just have just hardcore bands. I mean, eventually there was. I would say by the end of Conviction that existed, but in the very beginning days, um, there would be touring acts that would come through, and a bunch of hardcore bands might play. But so to answer your question, like we played like weekends with Conviction. So we would play Syracuse, New York with the Earth Crisis guys when they were first starting up. We watched them go from relatively unknown to like huge. Um, Snapcase was kind of part of that as well. Like they were just getting started when we were already gone probably, but like there was versions of that band, like Tim and those guys like doing other projects, like just like uh all these scenes were kind of small. So I never really had the experience of going on a full tour until I did the Damnation Turmoil tour. Um, and even that was like a regional tour. We just did like we just did like, I think if we went as far west as like maybe Chicago, but we didn't go the whole US. So Turmoil was my you know, introduction to a US tour.
How did you link up with Damnation? Obviously, them being pretty prominent in like the DC scene, which works out
Yeah.
for you because you were saying you kind of got into it through them as well. Um,
Yeah. Um, um, I don't. How did we link up? I think we just liked them a lot, and we just played shows, and we were like, we should fucking play shows, and it was kind of
yeah,
that simple. Um, they were a band that we just that Turmoil just really appreciated. That was another band that I probably should have cited. Like when we were talking about getting together, or I should say, as we were writing stuff, we would hear Damnation do something. We'd be like, damn, that's really good. Like, fuck, I want to do something like that. I think there's a level of competitiveness in every band, and you hear your friends do something really good and you're like, man, we gotta get our shit together.
yeah,
Like we
yeah.
suck.
It's funny too because when I was talking to Mike from Damnation,
Hmm.
he's so nonchalant about it all too.
Hmm.
Like like the way they started, he was just like, he just went in and he was like, oh, it actually sounds good. And then he was like, just call me when you guys need me and I'll come. Like it's just funny, like bands
Like a
that,
recording.
yeah, yeah. He's like, call me whenever you guys need me, let me know. Like it was just cool, like to
Yeah.
see band like being so nonchalant, but like to us, like they're some of our favorite bands too. Like everyone has such a
Yeah.
different process.
that has a lot to do with, again, just I keep beating this drum, but I think like just at the time they expected there was no like there would have been no manager for, not really in any
Yeah,
real sense. Like, you know, Turmoil had a manager at one point, but it's like it's just kind of unnecessary, probably. You know,
yeah,
now it's a little different. I think the whole structure of playing shows is different, so you need those things in place to be able to get on shows. You need to like be in certain circles to be able to do that. I can't speak from like what it's like as a younger band just getting started, but I would imagine it's probably in some ways harder to break in the door, because there is like a bit of a hierarchy in terms of the way the music scene is now versus like back then. You could probably,
definitely.
you know, walk up to somebody and be like, I want to play a show, and like, and they would get your demo and then either give you the show or not, you know. Like
Yeah.
it was pretty that it was, you know, it was pretty much that simple.
Yeah, and especially now, like hardcore has become so much more like normalized almost in the
Yeah, for
sense
sure.
that like even like bigger venues like Union Transfers booking hardcore acts, like stuff like that, that
Mm-hmm.
definitely makes it tougher, I feel like. Because now we're starting to like create like this like little pedestal
Mm-hmm.
of like, oh, I don't want to play a small room anymore kind of deal.
And the same thing happened even back in the 90s when we were, I would say even in the 80s probably it happened with like, you know, you get to a point where Agnostic Front's going to go, or Sick of It All, for example, is going to go on tour with Exodus. I know that was a tour. Um, and now they're playing big shows with like metal crowds, and Agnostic Front's opening up for, you know, whoever. I don't know. I'm assuming like they did some, at some point they must have done shows with some bigger metal bands. And
Yeah.
so if you're sick of it all and you're opening up for Slayer, you know, it's not this, you know, as a patron of like hardcore shows that were always like $4 and $5, you're like, fuck, I gotta pay $10 to go to this. Like, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
man, that seems like a dream come true now when
Oh yeah.
turnstile tickets are like $80 to go to a
Minimum.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My friend just got tickets to see, Morgan Wallen.
Yeah.
That my friend just got tickets to see him, $500 a ticket. That
I
should
mean,
that
just
shouldn't even
don't.
be allowed.
Yeah. No,
He's not even
for
in the
sure.
floor.
And
He's
and like, yeah, at some point there should be some kind of like, I don't know how you fix that, but I would imagine there should be a lottery for like a show where there's a cap at like $50,
hmm
right? And then you play one night where you can let people who don't have that kind of money play, and then you play another night where you get your shareholders happy and like
yeah.
in your business or whatever it is.
In Europe too, isn't there like a cap, I'm pretty sure, of like how much they can actually even charge? I'm pretty sure.
That sounds very European. I
It
don't know.
does. Like I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure he's like we were talking about when we were going overseas, it was like I was like, damn, like those tickets are gonna be so expensive. He's like, no, it's just $650. And I was like, sweet, there's no resale. Like I don't even think there is a resale opportunity as
There
much
might
over
not
there.
be, which is brilliant. I mean, yeah. I mean, we could go on forever about how we're getting gutted financially in this country, but like, um, yeah, I would say, I don't know anything about that, but I did try to look into tickets for a couple like bigger pop shows, and you can still pay a lot of money for a show in Europe if you're going to see certain acts.
Yeah,
So I don't know if like maybe certain venues or maybe certain artists cap it out, but yeah, I
yeah,
looked into like traveling to Europe just because like you can fly to, I mean, it's like halfway between, meaning like you can still pay $180 a ticket over there, but that same ticket, which would be like a Taylor Swift ticket here, would be $500.
hmm
So, you know, it's like you can fly to Europe in some situations and go see the show for the same price it would cost you to just go down to, you know, a stadium and see it here.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And plus, you're in a cool area. It's a lot cooler than
for
Philadelphia.
sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to kind of get into too, like you guys kind of just made an Instagram and we're like, okay, guys, we're back. Like, what was kind of what happened with what
How did that?
sparked that conversation?
I think I can take credit for this one. I think I sparked that conversation.
Nice.
I wanted to do the reunion. Joe Hardcore had asked us to do a couple years actually, but really like this one year he was like, I think there's a lot more. This probably was like 18 or 19, and or sorry, not 18 or 19, my bad. Um 23, I think it was. Um there were times where we got asked around 18, 19. I'm getting confused, but um, around 23, he was like, I think there's more interest in Turmoil now than there was last time you guys played. And the last time we had played was 2016. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. Um, and we were hoping to go back and do, there was like talk of doing like an anniversary show for the process of, and it just never happened. And him saying that there was more interest like sparked my interest. And I was getting antsy over COVID. I was trying to do a project with a bunch of riffs that we had never used from Turmoil, and we never pulled that off. We got kind of close to starting something, but um that kind of drug on. Work like as COVID restrictions opened up and things started happening, I was started going to shows. I started discovering new hardcore bands. I talked about this before, but um like I think the like when Drain hit the scene, that was like a band that I was like, damn, this is really fucking good. Like
That's how I
this is
got into
like a
hardcore, was Drain.
oh really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, well, that's how I kind of got re into it. Like I was always like a fan of like there's a lot of bands that I just trying to follow here and there. And like I would say the early 2000s were really heavily Boston influenced with Converge and just everything that was happening with,
Yeah.
up in Boston, Have Heart and all that stuff. And we had a little bit of there was a little bit of interest in us at that time, but I feel like with the onset of like the newer style of music that's like started to really hit over the last few years was like with bands like, and I'm not equating us to these bands, but I think when you look at bands like um I'm a fan of Inclination, I'm a fan of Drain, I like Kubla Khan, I like, these are especially Kubla Khan, huge band by a lot of metrics.
Hmm.
um they sounded like there was something a little closer to what Turmoil was doing. Like it sounded like, I'm not saying that we directly influenced those bands, but I am saying that like our style of playing felt like it had a little bit more to do with like something that was becoming more popular now versus
Yeah.
maybe some of the
Absolutely.
Boston stuff that was happening in the early 2000s. So like it felt like an opportunity for us to be like, hey, there's like a through line from like something we created a long time ago to like some of the things that are happening now. And so like let's jump on that and like let's and more importantly like let's play again. Like Hydro um you know was really talking about trying to get the band back together for years. And it was it was actually February of 25. I was in Florida on a job, and I was just sitting there, and I think I saw somebody in a hardcore shirt. I was listening to something. I was like on the boardwalk in Miami, and I was like, man, I want to play a fucking show. Like, I want to do this. Like, so I texted everybody and I said, we need to vote on this right now. Are we doing this or not? Like, if we're going to do it, we need to do it now. So I was like,
Yeah.
just vote now. And I said, I vote yes. And a couple other yeses came through. And Hodges was a little reluctant. He was like the holdout. He had his other bands going on. He's got other shit going on. He's got a family. And he was like, and honestly, like I understood his position. Like we had tried this the first time around. I had left the band in the late 90s to move on to photography. And then the band kept going for like another year. So he like in that time span got married, had kids, and like his daughter, I guess kid, sorry, Hodges. His his kid is growing up, and I think it was hard when his daughter was younger to like break away to go do something, and now she's reaching an age where he can like start to think about like playing a little bit more. And so finally it convinced him. He was really the last holdout, and we convinced him to do it. And then the offer started. We started like putting feelers out, like, hey, what if we want to do something? Like, what's the reality of us like starting to play shows? And our old bass player Jamie Getz, who was like always pretty integrated into the scene, he knew some people and he got a hold of some people, and he was like, hey, Turmoil's thinking about getting back together. All of a sudden we're getting text messages like, holy shit, are you serious? Like, and one of the early interests was FYA.
Okay.
And that, so we sort of got announced on, we not announced, but we sort of got like the okay from FYA before we had even played together. Like we haven't even played as a whole band yet, even as I do this interview with you, like
Yeah,
we're spread out throughout the country. And so the first time we're going to get to play as an entire band will be the night before we play our first show
at the church.
at the church,
Oh,
21st,
absolutely.
which is kind of, it just feels fucking crazy to not like get to play. Like I'm so used to being in like tour shape where you like,
Yeah.
you're all like, vibing together for like a month at a time or whatever, or at least weeks.
Hmm.
It's going to be weird to go into it like not cold because we're practicing in small groups, but it's not going to be the same as like coming off of a tour.
Absolutely. Have you been playing drums even when you guys like even when you're just doing photography and stuff?
Here and there I did, but I really stopped for a long time. I actually had a lot of problems with got diagnosed with tennis elbow. What's the other one? Golfer. I don't
Golfer
know.
shoulder?
No, it's like the two different sides of your wrist, the two different tendons. I can't think of what the
Uh,
other one is.
I
Spacing
should
on it.
know this. I'm a nurse, but I have no clue.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have no clue.
Yeah. So anyway, I ended up getting diagnosed with that, and I got, they give you like the shots, and like you're sort of okay to go. But I think between drumming and never really learning how to play drums properly,
Hmm.
um, it was I should turn a light on. I just realized how dark it is.
I know. I was realizing I keep seeing like on your reflection of the glasses.
Yeah.
So then you have the church too, and then you have FYA. Like, what's it like being put? And also too, just to interrupt my own question, like it's cool too. It was respectable too, like where they put you on the bill. Like was that like a good feeling, like not to be like, you know what I mean, like overtopped or whatever. Like you're like, oh, we still have relevance. Like we're gonna do this. We're gonna put out music. We're gonna or play music again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we knew that. I think based on Bob Wilson's reaction to like us wanting to do the reunion, we felt good that we would be like, we didn't know what to expect. We still don't know what to expect. We hear, look, what you hear online may not become a reality. There could be a bunch of people in their parents' basement just like saying that they're stoked for Turmoil, and then like we go to the show and like nobody really gives a shit. Like we don't really know. I
Yeah.
don't think that that's going to be the case, but we don't have like. I think we're just happy at this stage to like we're excited to play again. Like we have some new stuff that we started working on. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. I don't know if the other band members are going to care, but
I'd
we
love to
started
hear it.
working on some shit. Yeah, and I'm actually excited about it. Like we have some material that was never released that I want to rework.
Is that the same stuff from COVID times that you were talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that was some leftover stuff, and it just needs a little update, not like stylistically change, but just meaning like I think when we wrote the stuff, our attention spans were all cumulatively a little bit longer, and I'm like, let's shorten up some of these parts,
Hmm.
and let's think about some things a little bit differently. Um, but we even just the other night we started just Hodges and I get into these like I've noticed like the process of writing. We'll write a lot of good stuff in a very short period of time, and then we'll write a lot of mediocre stuff for longer periods of time. Like it kind of comes in waves. It's almost like if you could chart it out, there would be like this growth period of um songwriting where like you sort of need to bottle it up and put it in a you need to get it on a recording and do something with it quickly because those ideas go away quickly. And we had one of those moments recently where like there's like four different riffs and we're like, this is awesome. This could be like three or four different songs, like,
Yeah.
and so we're we're in the process of trying to do that, no pun intended.
No, I know we were saying the process of a lot earlier, and I
We
was
were,
like, yeah, we both were, and I was like,
I
this is
know.
it's gonna be great for a caption.
I don't know. Yeah.
Like for like writing now, do you have a do you have like a certain message that you're trying to convey more than where your older stuff was?
Lyrically
Yeah,
or music?
lyrically.
Lyrically, lyrically, the last material that I wrote that people would have heard didn't get a lot of play, but some of my favorite lyrics. You know, I'm just really, you and I touched on this with like the cost of everything. I do. And we talked about like Europe a little bit, like
Hmm.
versus states. It's like I'm personally, I don't want to speak for any politics for the rest of the band, and I don't want to get into any politics, but like, I just don't feel like there's any representatives that are truly representing the interests of the middle class or the interests of people in this country, like, or the lower class. I feel like almost everything is just corporate capture. And so I want to my goal would be to write a good part of a record that speaks to a very angry middle of the country, a very angry lower class, that people that feel like they're just getting, robbed
Yeah.
by a bunch of elites. And I don't think it's specific to a party. I think they both just throw shit at each other. But like, we can argue, like, are some beliefs better than others? 100% for sure. But when it comes to, at the end of the day, you like doing what's like really making any substantive change for something positive to happen for the people of the country, like, it just, I don't see it.
Yeah.
We get a couple of like social things that are like good, but at the same time, like, they don't move the needle economically. And I'm just watching money outflow to the richest people in the world. And I don't even necessarily mean like Elon Musk or anything. I mean, that's definitely one of them, but it's like so much deeper than all of that. It's like you can vilify like five people, but it's so systemic.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm motivated by that. I get really worked up about it. I listen to a lot of politics.
I like it. No, I like it. I like
I'm
it a
still
lot.
angry about it. So like, there's still something to write about. I mean,
Yeah, especially our genre of music that we cater to and like to listen to. Like, we're the perfect genre of fans and writers
yeah,
to convey political, even political in quotation mark message that like this really shouldn't even be a political issue, but it is.
right.
You know what I
Totally.
mean?
Yeah.
I want to touch too, like you were talking about how you were also in, well, still are, this is your main business is your photography.
Mm-hmm.
And you shot for the Sixers. I saw some stuff with like some of like the US Olympics
Mm-hmm.
team and stuff. How'd you kind of get into that? Was that something that you went to college for? Was that like your degree?
Yeah, I went to UArts. I didn't discover photography until I was in college. I actually went for art therapy. It was my original. Thought I was going to be, um, a psychologist or something. And
Hmm.
I just kind of, it wasn't even that I fell in love with photography. I worked for a guy who was a photographer, and I just thought his job was so cool, and I just respected him, and I liked how he worked. I liked watching him. I was an assistant, so I'd watch him do his thing. And I remember I did, it was an internship I did out of an obligation, but I was on that internship. I was like thinking to myself, like, what the fuck am I doing in school right now? Like, this is all a waste of money. Like, and then my whole attitude changed. I became actually I became a problem at my school. um,
Like a little
I,
rebel.
I became like, I wasn't paying attention in class. I got called out a lot. At one point, I got called into the dean's office for having a bad attitude, and they were like, "You should go to another." She actually literally told me I should go to another school. And I was. This is when at the time I was doing like hardcore shows and stuff,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Yeah, I'm spending all this money. And you're not teaching me shit." And she pulled a book off of the shelf behind her desk and put it on her desk, and she said, "If you want to learn like these technical things about photography, you should just read this book." And I was like, "Well, then why the fuck am I paying money to go to the school if that's your answer? Like, you should
Yeah.
teach me that book. Like, I'm paying you." And so I fell in love with photography. I fell out of love with like the education system at the time, but I went on. This is like when we were touring. I was assisting, so like we'd come home from tour and I would become a photo assistant. Um, and I did that for years, and then eventually got to the point where, you know, we were never making any money in the band. We were broke. And so to some degree, my parents were still like trying to help me out here and there, like not paying my rent or any shit like that, but meaning like I had to get all my bills shipped to my parents' house, because if I shipped them to my own apartment, I was not going to be there for 2 months or something like that.
Hmm.
So people were just like babysitting me in a way, because I was like perpetually in a band, and they just got tired of it. And everybody in my life, including my girlfriend at the time, was like, "You got to quit the band. Like, I can't keep doing this." So at some point I needed to get serious about photography, and I quit and started doing photography. I started as an assistant for years, and then eventually, short order of that is like, eventually saw an opportunity to do photography. I quit as an assistant and I started shooting. Um, but that's a long story. I would
Yeah.
say that's just the one thing I took that hardcore helped me with is like, when you're in an entertainment field similar to what I do, you need people to, you have to like be social, be easy, be flexible, and it helps to have something that people find interesting about you. So like there's photographers that are like surfers, there's
Hmm.
photographers that are mountain climbers. um, your clients want to think that you're interesting in some way or another. And the band was like a good catalyst for me. It was
Yeah.
like, I was in this band and we did this thing and whatever. And then I ended up working with people um, that were that were sort of like part of the music scene in other areas, like maybe shoot for a record label or something like that, or shoot for a magazine. Decibel magazine was a bank. I did a lot for Decibel. I did a lot for Revolver. Now I would like to think that those relationships were primarily because of my photography, but I know that some part of it was like that I knew the music, that I
Yeah.
knew people within the scene. I shot Converge, like, um, but shot tons of bands that like kind of knew who Turmoil was at the very least, and so that helped. They kind of helped each other in that way.
That's cool.
Yeah,
It's cool too, like those kind of magazines. Also, like they just cater very well to the hardcore scene and everyone. I was talking to Sammy from every band in the world. That's how I introduced them. Um,
be good.
that there's a lot of people that were in this scene that are still working, but now they're at like the music labels and stuff. So it's cool to see like that family and bonding still there.
Oh, for sure. There's such a huge network if you were to like graph out like people that I've been to restaurant. I went to a restaurant in Boston that was like a bougie restaurant.
Hmm.
Sat at the bar. They had a bunch of vegetarian. I'm vegetarian. They had a bunch of vegetarian options on the menu, and then I'm talking to the bartender. He's like, "Oh, our chef's like was into hardcore." And then the dude comes out, and it turns out like he used to go to shows in Boston all the time, and like again, new turmoil, whatever, and like
Yeah,
we became Instagram friends, and
that's cool.
it's like you just run into those networks all the time. It's like I think it's a beautiful thing. So yeah.
Absolutely. I'll leave you with one question. You were talking this, or sorry, final question. You were talking about how you kind of left the hardcore scene, got into photography. Now that you're back into music and you're doing, what's like one artist that you wish you could shoot like concert photos for? It could be living or dead.
Sade,
Okay.
hands down.
I wouldn't expect that answer
Yeah,
at all.
yeah.
That's a good answer. I like Sade too, so I get it.
Sade's fucking amazing, dude.
That's a good one. That's a good.
That's my like the Cure. I think like my like mountain of like I could go with an odd and like a more obvious thing would be like Slayer or something like that. I never
Yeah.
got to work with them, but I don't really. I think I wouldn't care as much. Like I would care a little bit. Also, the drummer who replaced me in Turmoil ended up being a roadie or drum tech. I think it was drum tech,
Mhm.
maybe roadie for Slayer.
Oh, cool.
And he had a kind of a rough. He was like, "Don't ever work for your idols."
Oh, really?
So,
No.
but I mean, dude, the metal scene is not like hardcore punk and metal have always been a thing where like they're not people that I put up on a pedestal too high.
Hmm.
They're always attainable in my view. They're just regular people, and everybody's regular people except for Sade.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'd probably put like Beyonce on the list.
Yeah, Beyonce's on there.
We'll add
Beyonce's
her.
on there.
Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much. I really
yeah,
appreciate you
man.
joining.
Cool.
Guys, there's
Yeah,
gonna be a ton
thank you.
of, well, not a ton, but Turmoil will be playing at FYA, Hellfest, and then for the locals, Philadelphia, the church, December 21st. And it's going to be a crazy show. Balmora is playing. I think Foreign Hands is playing.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's going to be
Living
fantastic.
Open.
Yeah, yeah, there's a great bill. It really is.
Yeah.
There'll be some links down below, guys, to buy tickets. And they did put a merch store out. So check it out, support the band, and see you next time.
Thank you.